So the next file I'm going to work with is our X site, and the site plan is what comes from the architect. So that's going to be on Blackboard. You're going to go ahead and open the one that says site plan architecture. Let's look at that one. All right. So this one, I took the liberty of already cleaning out the title block on paper space. We don't really need that. Remember, I'm going to create my X site, which I'm going to X reference into another drawing on Lego later, or the next step. So I took off whatever dimensions and everything. So I'm left with all the line work that I need from the architectural site plan. Okay. Now a couple of things that I want to make sure that we understand. This is the site plan from the architect. Okay. The architect has really control only of what's in the site. Okay. The architect sometimes puts in their the property lines. They put center lines. All right. And I did confirm this with an architect that's here in this area, and you're very familiar with him. I confirmed if this is something that happens with him, and he says, yeah, he does this, in that whenever he creates his site plan, he actually does get the survey from the surveyor. He gets the survey from the surveyor and creates the site plan from that one, and that's really the correct thing to do. I've had some bad experiences, and I hope this never happens to you. But I'm going to go ahead and go over that experience with you, this scenario, in case that ever does happen to you. In that, I got a site plan, and I asked the architect at one point in my career, and I asked him, "Where did you get the property line?" He's like, "Oh, I field measured it." Like, what do you mean you field measured it? Like, yeah, I measured it out in the field, and like, how did you measure a property line? Well, I couldn't get a straight answer, so that was already a red flag for me. So that's one thing that I've always, and it's just been my personal experience in that sometimes we get some weird stuff. So this, let me just tell you how to work with these things, okay? But once again, the most important thing from the architect, once again, is the site plan, the building, where they want the driveways, the curbs, the parking islands, the handicap accessible ramps, all and all that. That comes from the architect. Whatever property lines, whatever center lines they have there, or even what they're calling the existing curb, does not come from the architect. That needs to be done from the topo, from the surveyor, because the surveyors are the only ones, by the way, that are legally capable of plotting and describing property lines. Okay, not an architect, not even a civil engineer. A civil engineer can't plot property lines and say, yeah, that's the property line. No, that's only done by a surveyor. So you're going to get the property line from the surveyor. So what we're going to do is, once again, this is what comes from the architect. And the other thing too, by the way, is notice that this is notice that the architecture plan is facing like X and Y on a 0 and 90 degree angle, and the X topo is not. So remember, this is based on a geodetic coordinate system. It's also based on true north versus building north, because the architect will always face the building and call like the front of the building to be north, or the other side. I'm not sure, but I will tell you that it's never really with a magnetic north, where the having to do with bearings and distances. And I think we already had that discussion as far as how bearings and everything are measured from north and south. So this is the direction, this is the angle that we need to work with. So I need to take this site plan somehow and rotate it to fit onto that angle of the X topo and all that stuff. But so how do I do that? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to temporarily XREF in to, as a matter of fact, let me go ahead and do this. I'm going to go ahead and save this one. I'm going to go ahead and save this one, and I'm going to call this one the X site. And I apologize, in my previous video I kept saying X site for the other one. The other one was actually the X topo. Sorry about that. So the X topo is this one that I have for the topo from the surveyor. X site is the one that I'm going to be creating. Okay, so right now, once again, all I'm doing is save as, and I'm going to save this architecture drawing X site. Save. Okay, so I am going to temporarily XREF in the topo. I'm going to temporarily XREF in the topo. I'm going to touch a drawing, and I'm going to attach the topo. I'm going to go over to my OneDrive where I'm saving my files. If you're saving yours on the documents, go ahead and go to that folder. Just make sure you know which folder it's at. Mine happens to be another OneDrive, and I'm going to XREF in the X topo. There's no scale factor, so I don't change any scales or rotations, nothing. Just basically leave everything alone. The insertion point will be 000. So if I leave this on, by the way, I'll have to type it in on the screen. Let me If I take it off, it'll basically take the X, Y, Z as 000. Either one would work. And hit OK. All right. And look at that. Okay. So this is very normal. This is very normal. Now, the reason that happened is that this is way bigger. The reason for that is because if I look at my units are in architectural units. This is from the architect. The topo comes from the surveyor. We and the surveyor, if you may remember, just like civil engineering units, we work with decimal feet. So we have something that says 45 feet, and I take a distance. You're going to have to do this, but just to show you, that's 45 units, 45 feet. These are the units we are going to be working with. The site plan came from the architect. The architect uses architectural units. Okay. And to help us figure out what units, sizes, and things like that, for a quick reference, is I've always personally gone with parking stalls. So just to know what scale, what size we're at, if I go look at a parking stall, if I were to take a distance of the parking stall, the typical width of a parking stall is 9 feet. The typical length of a parking stall where you park a car at the shopping center or at the mall or Walmart, wherever, is 20 feet. 9 feet by 20. That's always been my guide to tell me in what units I'm in and what size is this. Is this scaled or something like that? If you ever have something that's, just to let you know, scaled to something, and you're like, well, what size is it? If you go in there and measure it, and it says something weird like 2.3 feet, well, I don't think a car fits in 2 feet 3 inches. A car, like a vehicle, like the one that you ride to school in, like, no, it's 2 feet. That's like the size of two tiles that are on the floor. It's not right. So something's not right there. So you always want to make sure that something is proportionate, that it makes sense. So once again, check the parking stalls 9 feet by 20. Okay. Notice though, they are in architectural units. We do not work with architectural units. We work with decimals. So we need to change our units over to decimal. Okay. Now by doing that, notice now I have 107 point, well, 108. In our eyes, as in the civil engineering world, that's 108 feet. This is 240 feet. It's bigger than a building. Okay. Remember, this is an architectural unit. So this is very typical of what happens whenever we get something from an architect, is we need to scale it. Okay, we need to scale it. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale everything. Okay, the only thing I'm not going to scale is this part because that's my XREF. So I do not want to scale that part. So within my selection set, I'm going to type in the letter R, and I'm going to remove the XREF because I don't want to scale that one. Okay, enter. Base point. At this point, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to pick a point. And I'm going to scale everything 12 times down. And I'll tell you why 12 times. And the number I'm going to use is a number that I had engraved in my brain, 0.08333333. And the 3 is infinite. 0.0833 is going to be my scale factor. Okay. Once I do that, then you notice, and I go and take a distance now of that parking stall. How wide should it be? 9 feet. Lo and behold, this is now 9 feet. This should be 20 feet. And there it is. Okay. So what happened is architectural units, the one unit is 1 inch. We need to have that as 1 foot. Okay. Just for reference, you're going to have to do this, but just to show you, if I were to put this back in architectural units and I were to measure that, it's not going to be 9 feet. It's going to be something very, very small. 9 inches, as a matter of fact. Okay. So yeah, that's what happens whenever we work with architects and engineers, that we have to scale things. Okay. Now you might be asking, why 0.083333? The reason for that is because it's 12 inches equal in a foot. So it's in the 1 foot, it's 12. So 1 divided by 12 is 0.083333. So because I used this conversion a lot, I just happen to memorize this number, 0.08333. Once again, all it is just 1 divided by 12. Okay, 0.0833. And that gets us now to our civil engineering units. This is XREF. If you may remember, the distance of 346 feet is from this property corner to this property corner. So I'm going to go and take a distance just to verify it. From this corner to this corner is 300.46. Perfect. It matches. So we're in good shape. So now at this point is where I'm going to start moving my, and remember, you're not going to move the X site. That one came, I'm sorry, the X topo. I keep saying X site. We're not going to move that one. That one's going to stay exactly where it is. Don't move it. Don't scale it. Just XREF it in when we do it, and just don't move it and leave it alone. You move the architectural site plan over to it. Not only that, we're going to rotate it to fit into place. Okay, and hopefully, fingers crossed, the the property lines match. Let's and then everything matches. Let's find out. Okay, a little bit of fingers crossed. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and move. And since I just selected this one a little while ago when I moved it back here, when I use the move command, I'm not going to go and put a big window around it. I'm going to type in the letter P. And what that does is going to select everything that was previous. Enter. And then I'm going to move it from a point to a point. All right. I went from what's going to be the property corner of the architecture. The line weights are kind of bugging me a little bit. I'm going to change the scale. Our scale factor here should usually be like I'm not sure what it's going to be. It's probably going to be like a 1 to 30 or something. Okay. And LT scale, yeah, 30. LT scale is a command I typed in. There you go. That looks a lot better. All right. So I'm going to move P for previous again. And I'm going to go from this corner to the property line right here. Okay. To rotate it, I'm going to use the rotate command. P for previous. I'm going to pick this point here. What angle? I'm not sure. So I'm going to go as a reference. And I'm going to pick this point here, this point here as my two reference points. And then now I'm going to revolve it over to this point right here. Okay. There we go. So let's see. Does this property line match? Wow, it looks actually pretty good. You can see that the property line that the architect had before, I think that's the curb that they had, because this is the XREF. So we have a difference in the curb. Okay, so I have to fix that. What about the property line? Aha. All right, so we have some property line issues. Okay, so remember, guys, whatever is from the architect property line, existing curb is not, we can't use that. Okay, we have to use the reality. This is the topo. This is what comes from the surveyor. The surveyor says the curb is over here. The architect says the curb is over here. Again, this is the existing curb. That's where we're going to tie in our new driveway. It's in two different locations, so we can't use that one. We can't use this one. Okay, this is the one that comes from the architect. To if you get confused, don't forget that you can always go to the XREF and unload, not detach, but just unload the XREF. Okay, reload the XREF. All right, so yeah, so we're gonna have to adjust this one. Okay, let me and then again the property line, but everything else matches pretty good. See, we're right on there. So we're just going to go ahead and run with that one and do our adjustments. I'm going to go ahead and unload the X topo. All right. Whatever the architect is calling center lines, property lines need to be removed. They are not the ones responsible for that information. Even this property line here gets removed. Okay. The curb that the architect is claiming is the existing curb is not the existing curb. We already verified that that's going to be, it's different. So I'm going to go and take this off. All right. I'm going to reload the topo. Okay, perfect. Now this is working very, very nicely. Okay. So once again, we can see our property lines. Now this is where you have to coordinate with the architect. And at one point, you hopefully have a good relationship with an architect and tell them, hey, it's in a different location. So we're going to have to adjust this. We're going to have to adjust this. So you're going to have to make some changes. You're going to have to make some changes to the curb. Let me get this guy off. Okay. So we'll still leave it at 15 feet. That's the face of curb, but you know, again, the architect had the existing curb over here. This is where it's at. So I'm just going to go ahead and adjust it. You at one point really need to coordinate with the architect and send them the updated site plan. Hopefully they'll communicate and take that information. So I'm going to go circle TTR. I'm going to go circle tangent radius, and I'm going to select this line here and the curve, the face of the curve here, and I'm going to make that 15 feet just like the way it was. Okay, there it is. Trim this guy back and trim this one. Oops. And I'm going to trim this one up to there. Perfect. So now we have where the new development, the new driveway is coming up to the existing curb and offset 0.5. Okay, that's the typical curb, line from endpoint to endpoint. Make sure it's the correct layer, new curb, and I think that's the layer over here too. New curb, very good. Oh, there's a little gap there. Extend that one. Okay. Again, this is just the CAD stuff, and erase this one. Extend. Well, we're going to have to extend this. I'm going to go circle, TTR for tangent radius from this line here over to the face of the curb here. 15 foot, there it is. Extend. And yeah, there it is. Trim. So basically just redoing the driveway to match the actual existing curb from the survey. The surveyor is the one that tells us exactly where that existing curb is at because they measured it with their total station, GPS, whatever equipment they used. Very good. How about the other side over here? Same thing. Okay, so it's not matching. So once again, let's just adjust that. Circle TTR. 15 feet. Extend the new curb. Trim. Trim. Offset 0.5. Extend. And line. So I went ahead and fixed this one too, and there we go. So that's basically it for the X site. Once again, the only thing you're going to see on the X site, let me unload the X topo for a little bit. Unload is this. No property line, no existing curb. It's really just what comes from the architect as far as the new development with the new driveways, new parking, new building. So we really don't need to see the rest of that stuff. Reload. Okay. The rest of it comes from the surveyor on the Xtopo. The next video will show you how we're going to put together this information and start creating our grading plan. I'll show you some tips and ideas on how to start the feature lines and start the design on the next video.